Yo! What's up, everybody? Welcome. It's Orange Bloods live on a Monday, which means it's time for the Overreaction Monday show. I'm Jeff. He's Anwar. We're brought to you by RogueShop.com. Use that promo code OrangeBloods and make it happen with Texas is home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. You want to get your pets to chill out a little bit, or grandma, or ma, or, well, yeah, check out the products on the website. Trust me, they will be your friend. Mr. Richardson, we're coming out of a weekend where, and oh, by the way, like, comment, subscribe to the page. Push that button. We've got over 70,000 subscribers now to the channel. Thank you. Longhorns had a scrimmage this weekend. Ohio State had a scrimmage this weekend. We're 19 days away from Texas v. Ohio State in Columbus, and I'm struck this morning by how much it seems like we know about what happened at the Texas scrimmage. And we're going to definitely talk about that, the conversations from Saturday and the themes and what we should all be taking from that from a larger scale, obviously on the tips of everybody's brains. And yet, over on the Ohio State side of things, the joke over there is that the information inside the football program is like Fort Knox. And sure enough, I was on websites, I was on YouTube channels, I was on newspaper sites and TV sites. I was looking everywhere. I could not find a detail, not a completed pass, not this guy caught a touchdown, not the starting quarterback looked like the start. I couldn't find anything. I even went to YouTube. You sent me the same link this morning, and you were like, here it is, catch. Ohio State, massive scrimmage intel. I lasted 47 minutes in that video, Anwar. And then I realized they got me with okey doke. There's no actual scrimmage info.
There was no scrimmage. Because I was like, oh, catch, you're over-exaggerating. Look at this. I found this in 15 seconds.
So, I don't know. It's really interesting to me. I was on Rivals this weekend on 3, I guess on 3 on the college side. And one of their college football reporters had a camp intel on schools all over the country. And there was intel on the Texas scrimmage, and there's nothing on Ohio State. I don't know. It's a fascinating backdrop to this game, which is the more and more as it gets closer onward, it's wild that this game leads the season off. This feels so unusual that 1 versus 2 in the season opener. I was looking at the August 23rd weekend of games to see, is there anything else? I was like, not really.
Week 0, you mean?
Yeah, that week 0 weekend where I looked at the Thursday night games before the Saturday games. I think Nebraska plays Cincinnati. It's literally right out of the gate. And I'm fascinated by it. I feel like we know a lot about this Texas team. And I feel like the defending national champions are weirdly the most unknown quantity of a number 2 team defending national champion that I think you could ever anticipate seeing. It's been 48 hours since their scrimmage ended, and I still don't know who did what. If anything, I wouldn't even know they had a scrimmage, except they keep telling us there was a scrimmage.
You know, that's one of those situations, Catch. It's fascinating, by the way, because it's like a different universes.
You had play-by-play. And then in this drive, it was 3 and out, and then they punted it, and then they did this, and it's wild.
Yeah, that usually with something like that, it's probably, look, I've done this for a lot of years. I'm 30 years into this business. So, I understand how these things work and how the sausage is made. Usually something like that probably means that Ohio State and the people that cover it, they have a really good kind of symmetry. And it's kind of like, hey, guys, do us a solid. just don't put anything out from the scrimmage this weekend, and we'll take care of you on the back end with some other stuff, some other important intel. But we have some other things that we don't want to get out. And you see it, like, for instance, there's some programs, Catch, that allow reporters to watch their entire scrimmage. They're from start to finish every single day, right? They're not only scrimmages, but practices every single day. But what happens is there's kind of a, okay, hey, we're going to give you this, but here's what we expect in return. We don't want you to necessarily put some things out here, proprietary information you can't do, but blah, blah, blah. So it's interesting, right? But it's also fascinating too, Catch, because you go to an NFL training camp, you can watch that stuff from start to finish as a fan for weeks. I know people, when I cover the Bucks, people would just fly in and spend like a week or two in Tampa. They do it in when they're for Dallas, when they go out to California, like, man, we're going to spend a vacation. Just watch practice. So it's fascinating how each program kind of does their things differently. And on the Ohio State side, it sounds like they're like, yo, we're all boys. It's kind of like
we rule with an iron fist, though. Like, what is always I've gotten the vibe at Ohio State is it's more like if you report on anything, you'll be cut out of everything. And I think I would rather be cut out of everything and be non-credentialed and just not go to anything at all than to be like, you can't do your job. And if you do your job, you're the bad guy. It's
college is so weird like that, though. I mean, college does sometimes they do try to rule with the iron fist. But you try to do that shit in the NFL, like, them dudes would look at you like you crazy, man. Like, you like, hey, man, you don't report this. They're like, man, F you.
That's not like, if you're threatening to take away my credentials, then that means I don't have to play by your rules at all. Like,
it's actually a better thing.
You sure you want to play that game?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's now if they go that route, yeah, all you need is the one person who's like, I don't care. That's like, if we won't relitigate.
You won't credential me, but people can come to me and I'll have the information. It's an interesting deal. I will say this: I made some calls. I checked around. I read the websites and I tried to get whatever the hell information I could from Ohio State camp. There are a couple of themes that will sound very similar.
Yeah.
Number one, Ohio State's defense is better than Ohio State's offense. And I think that the most interesting, there are two things to me that stand out about what I think has happened in Ohio State's camp in the first week and a half. Number one, Julian Sayin is going to be the starting quarterback. That's just is going to happen. Although no details of the scrimmage came out, there does seem to be a little bit of a public acknowledgement that, like, this is just the way that it's going to go. It very much reminds me of the Hudson Card, Casey Thompson situation a few years ago when, like, it was, they knew what they were going to do before they did it, and everything kind of looks a certain way, but you got to say what you got to say. You don't want guys to transfer, stuff like that. So it's going to be saying, and I think it's really fascinating because you even mentioned this to me in our team's channel when we were talking about the video that you and I watched, that they've got a very specific idea of how this game goes with regards to Arch Manning and the Ohio State defense.
That part of the video was actually pretty interesting.
It wasn't a bad video. I enjoyed watching the product. I just hated that they lured me in with false advertising. They think that Arch Manning, the Ohio State side of things, feels like Arch Manning's a bit of a mark, that he just hasn't been in these big game situations. He hasn't been on the road. He hasn't played a defense like Ohio State. They think that he holds the ball too long. Like, it was really fascinating to kind of get their vibe on how they perceive Arch Manning, because their perceptions were slightly different than mine, but that's fine. But there was never a realization on the other side that Julian Sayin is kind of going to go through the exact same thing, that both of these two teams, it would appear, are very confident about the defensive side of the ball. And I do think one thing that they stressed that we haven't talked about at all is the fact that they have a turnover with Matt Patricia coming from the NFL to be the new defensive coordinator. And it is true that whatever, like Steve Sarkisian, I'm as they get closer to this game, the question will eventually be asked to Sark, how are you preparing for Ohio State's defense in this game with it being a Matt Patricia defense? Do you watch Matt Patricia from the NFL? Like how much, what's the process there, especially with so much turnover in personnel and guys coming in from the portal? Ohio State, they think that look, and this is a program onward that's loaded. They're just as talented as Texas.
Yes.
And technically, they have a few more super blue chips on their roster than the Longhorns do. They think their defensive line, and you heard it on the video, I've read it they think that defensive line is going to be one of the 5 best that they've ever had at Ohio State. Okay. I don't know that I believe that. I don't think some of the guys they brought in are as good as the guys they had a year ago, but they believe at Buckeyes camp that is emerging as their real strength. And I think it's really interesting because that is, I think, at the forefront of what we're wondering about with this Texas team is this Texas offensive line. But I think it mirrors a lot that what's happening at Ohio State. I think we're going to walk into this game in 19 days. You're going to have 2 pretty badass defenses that are ahead of their offensive counterparts. And I just wonder what kind of game. I keep thinking, take the under, take the under, take the under. I just think based on what we're hearing out of these camps, that points will be at a premium in week 1, and that both of these offenses will almost certainly find themselves in days to be named later once the month flips to September.
Yeah, I mean, Catch, the thing is, it's almost parallel outside of the scrimmage notes. It's almost a parallel as far as because they're talking about the defensive line being so good, but yet here at Texas, we're talking about this defensive line being so good with all these new faces that are going to be in the interior. And we're here like, man, this defensive line is going to be badass, right? It's almost, and then we've heard the same thing. The defense is ahead of the offense, new quarterback, right? And so, and again, the good thing, I wish, and whoever had the video, it was like Buckeye Insider or something to that effect. But I think that was what it's called. One of the things they pointed out is they felt like one of the weaknesses of Arch, like to your point, like maybe he holds on the ball too long. He only goes for one read. And they started kind of breaking down how they've been working a lot on stunts in different ways to throw him off. So to make sure that one read isn't there, and how they're preparing for a lot of RPO for Arch, because they just believe that if the read isn't there, he's going to take off. And so they were trying to basically figure out ways to confuse him in order to lure him into taking off, because that's where they feel like the advantage for them is going to be. But hell, Catch, the same thing probably said for the Texas side. Like they're going to probably do the same thing. Maybe not for him to take off, but to try to confuse him and try to make sure. So there's some interesting parallels between the two programs and the two approaches. And I don't know if it just comes down to it being a road game. It's at Ohio State, but there are a lot of similarities, kind of going into the game on both sides. Big difference though is Ohio State has a badass receiver. Now, I mean, and if I'm looking for a tiebreaker, having probably the best receiver in the country would probably be that tiebreaker.
They are really bothered about that Jeremiah Smith 1 for 3 yards or whatever.
They do not like that question.
It's so weird because I don't feel like we've spent a lot of time. You lose the game and you don't sit around talking about, well, hey, yeah, 28-14, sure. But Jeremiah Smith on lockdown, like that just hasn't been a thing. And some of it was like, oh, yeah, no, well, the secondary is badass and the defense is badass. And like they kind of did what they did. One of the stories of this game will be how Ohio State finds a way to get Jeremiah Smith involved in this game in a way that they didn't. They talked about moving him around in the backfield shifting him all over the place to try to create matchups. I'm reminded the conversation that Manny Muhammad had with the media on Thursday, where he's like, look, I had some of that, but it was a total team effort. Jahdae Barron would have been involved in that they, based on down and distance and game situations, kind of had their plan and stuck with it. But yeah, no, it feels like now with 3 weeks to go, it's starting to feel a little bit like Ohio State week now. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I was trying, but I'm starting to think about this game specifically. I think we're probably a week away, and this is maybe the good segue into the first question I want to ask you about Saturday's scrimmage environment for the Longhorns, because we've had now a day and a half to kind of marinate on everything. I think the coaches are probably a week away, right? 19 days away. I think when we get to 12, they'll almost certainly be thinking Ohio State. They won't wait till 5 days before the game to introduce some stuff from that week. It may even happen this week. It may have already even happened, and maybe they're just not calling it that. But then maybe today it's like, this is some stuff from the Ohio State we're going to be working on, and the players will go, oh, we've already been doing some of this. Now it makes sense. I think that I wake up today coming out of the weekend realizing this is kind of it. I really believe after this week, the coaches are going to start really mentally, this is who we're taking to Columbus to win the game with. And if you're not on the list, if you don't make a play, and I thought about this a little bit with Quinn Ewers yesterday and his performance in a preseason game. They only have 3 preseason games now in the NFL. And so now it's like, oh my God, like if Quinn wants to make the roster next week, you better kind of ball out. You can't go 5 of 18 one week and then not turn it around the next week. And I kind of feel that way about the Texas players in this week and in the next scrimmage. If you were quiet this week, if you were quiet in the scrimmage, if you didn't perform at a high level in the scrimmage, I just have to believe the coaches will be thinking to themselves, yeah, we'll get you on the field, but not in Columbus. And so this is a big week to either put your name into cement as a guy that they can count on in that game, or I think you're probably missed a shot. And I think that very quietly, there's a lot of pressure on everybody in the program this week. Make your mark, because at some point you really do have to turn your head to Ohio State.
Yeah, it's interesting, Kedge. What's fascinating about this camp, there aren't really a lot of compelling battles that we're talking about. The things that we're like, oh man, this is important here, right? You mentioned certain things like the quarterback battles have always been kind of interesting, right? And, we don't really have, it's kind of funny. You and I can almost make the 2 deep probably right now and just say, okay, this is who we feel like is on the 2 deep without a couple of variables, right? But
what's the biggest battle?
I mean, the only battles seem to be playing time. Because you have the Kojo injury kind of kills the right tackle battle, right? So
he tried to convince everybody that it was still a battle. Like, well, hey, it's not over. We're not conceding that Brandon Baker is the starter. And it's like, well, no, he probably is.
Yeah, I mean, we get it. You want to keep everyone motivated in camps. I understand. You can't be like, well, it's Baker's job and have everybody on an offensive line, quit. So you got to keep those guys motivated. But
it's secondary, isn't it? It's just which of the 5 guys are the 5 guys?
Yeah, but even within that catch, it's not like, oh my God, like you fall off a cliff in the 2 deep. You're almost like, oh, those are the 2 guys. All right, cool. Because the next guys coming behind them are just as good, right? And so there aren't a lot of camp battles. It's really just about figuring out who the best guys are. It's because there's so much talent that's out there, Catch. It's not that compelling. Like we already know who's starting running back, right? And you and I talked about that over the weekend. We know what that is. We got an idea what the receivers are going to look like. kind of variables. We'll just got to see if some of the younger players get in. Maybe the defensive tackle stuff, but you're kind of starting to hear, Watson's name. You're hearing Hero Canu's name, right? So you're starting to hear these names consistently. You're like, okay, that's starting to come, about. And there's not a lot. Again, really good problems to have, but that's why I think it's easier to start thinking about Ohio State, because it's almost like the heavy lifting here is pretty much done. And so all it is kind of looking ahead as to, what lies ahead with Ohio State. We just looked this weekend, couldn't find anything, but
I still cannot believe they called that report massive scrimmage. I still cannot believe they got me.
Catch you and I joked. Sometimes people give us a hard time in the comments, and they'll say, "You guys took too long to get into the topic," and it would take us like 2 minutes. Could you imagine if we went an entire YouTube video and just never talked about the topic in there?
Dude, there were 17 minutes in, and that guy was talking about he just got his tickets for the Texas game. And I was like, wait a minute. When are we getting to the scrimmage? Hey,
good information other than that, though.
No, I enjoyed the show. I get it. I would have watched. I might watch later. I'm just saying it wasn't what they teased. I want you to give me a name. I'm going to give you mine. I want you to give me a name of a guy that you think needs to have a big week. Oh. Mine, and I'm only going first because I'm so proud of myself. Emmett, don't call him Emmanuel Sanders Mosley. Oh, I'm so proud of myself.
That's a good one.
I have been calling that kid Emmanuel Mosley because I want to call him Emmanuel Sanders, and I don't know why, because his name's neither Emmanuel or Sanders, and I just haven't been able to do it. But I finally today, Emmett Mosley. Emmett. I thought it was a big deal that he wasn't active and participating on Saturday. Parker Livingstone is having a good camp. It seems like the three are Wingo, Moore, and Livingstone, and that if Mosley's going to be a guy that has a big role in the first week, it goes into what I was just saying, that I don't know that this is the time of camp that if you're a new guy, you need to be missing. I think I would say this about anybody at any position that's a transfer that wasn't here for the spring. Like, these are the practices I don't think they'll feel like he can afford to miss. And so while no one behind the scenes has suggested that Mosley's dealing with an injury that's going to hold him out of action for a while, he was out of action on Saturday. And I think if he's going to be a guy that has a role for Ohio State, then I think he's got to get back. He's got to be a guy that not only gets back on the field this week, I think he has to play well. And if it's not him, I do wonder who the fourth wide receiver is going to be, because at that point, it does seem to turn into a rotating game of every freshman seems to be doing something. And on a different day, Jamie French, on a different day, Khalil Lockett's getting some work with the ones. On a different day, Michael Terry has a good day. On a different day, Dalen McCutcheon has a good day. And so I wonder if this is the week where one of those guys is considered the first of those guys. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe this week I'll just have my ear to the grindstone wondering, how much does Mosley play? And if he's out, does one of these freshmen make a move in a way that they'll have a prominent place in the game plan in Columbus?
I think it's a good one, because I think, Mosley was brought in to compete against Parker Livingstone, and we're hearing a lot of buzz about Parker and, some of the symmetry that he has with Arch, and, playing well in training camp. And so, he's a guy that they thought, okay, veteran guy comes in, maybe pushes someone like Parker. And remember, he's the only receiver that they sign out the portal. So I think there was high hopes that he would be a guy that honestly was probably in that starting lineup in week one. And Parker has been able to fight that off so far. Parker needs to continue doing what he's doing and to continue to have a little bit of that distance. But I think that's fair as relates to Emmett. Like, this is probably a week, 2 weeks where, okay, man, it's your time to shine. This is your time to kind of step up and do your thing. I'll tell you who mine is. It's probably not as sexy as yours, but I do find it interesting, though. I think this is a huge week for Jarrett Gibson. And
I did not expect that to be your name.
I told you. It wasn't going to be as sexy as yours. But, I mean, he was at one point a backup running back, like due to injuries, okay? And right now, Catch, I think we've solidified that Wisner's number one. And CJ Baxter, we heard in the scrimmage, has played well. And now we've heard some things on the Christian Clark being as well. Christian Clark, Gibson, like that was kind of like, okay, who's going to be that person? And Clark seems to be separating himself a little bit. I think it's a big week for Gibson. I think this is big for him because when you start talking about, I mean, look, there's always a role in special teams. So it's not the end all be all. But for when I look at that running back room, I could you can see him potentially getting squeezed out. And they did, Sarton did mention him a couple of weeks ago, but that's kind of a guy for me. I'm like, this is probably a really big week for you, all things considered.
I think there's probably a dozen Jarrett Gibsons at various positions that look. I think with a guy like Gibson, you can make a case that if it doesn't start to happen in the next 7 to 10 days, like that's his Texas career. Like I hate to say it, but he's an out-of-state guy. He's in year 2. You don't want to go 2 full years and then go into a third year and have uncertainty. Am I even going to get it on? What is my role? And it's the one thing I don't know about a Jarrett Gibson right now is I don't know what his role is on this team. It's not an issue of whether or not he can play at this level. I think we all know that there's a player in there. It is like at every other position. There's like a half dozen guys that have NFL aspirations that want to that are vying to be ahead of him. It does feel like without even taking James Simon and Ricky Stewart as true freshmen into the equation, of the 4 returning running backs, it does feel like Gibson is 4th in the pecking order right now. And 2 of those guys are coming off of major injuries. If they're even now, are they leaving? Because shouldn't the best versions of Christian Clark and Baxter be available later in the year? That this is whatever they are, unless they have injury setbacks, they should be ascending as they get more comfortable with their bodies. I will just say at the running back position in general, it's a position that sometimes you have to reverse engineer your way through these practice reports. It's not always what is said. It's always sometimes what's not said. It's the quiet implications, if you will. And I think that, you come out of the scrimmage on Saturday and there was a little bit of CJ Baxter buzz and like he moved the pile a little bit and, did look good in the red zone and then in goal line. I was going to ask you, do you think CJ Baxter is the goal line back? I mean, because I thought that might have been something for Gibson, and I don't know that it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I know that Sark loves CJ Baxter.
Loves him.
I mean, so, all CJ's got to do is give Sark a reason to love him, and he's going to ride with CJ. I mean, so, yes, I can 100% see that, that he gets those touches around there.
Because a year ago, they could not count on Wisner getting them the yard that they needed. And that wasn't always Trey Wisner. Like, I'm not throwing that on him. But look, our lasting memory of this Texas offense is that 1st and goal from the 1 with the season on the line, and they just couldn't line it up and run it. Lines changed. I don't know. And in that moment, it wasn't like, well, just give the ball to Trey Wisner 4 times. He'll get it in. It was like, oh, we got to try to trick our way. We got to pitch it. We got to sneak it. They didn't have a working plan. I think there will always have been a thought of, well, we'd had C.J. Baxter, we'd have scored that touchdown. Whether that's fair or not, sometimes when you miss the thing, when you're missing something, it's real easy to think that that thing you're missing would have fixed everything. I think it makes sense in a lot of ways that if Baxter as a short yardage role seems like maybe a good way to break him in. I don't know how many carries you could expect him against Ohio State to have, but if the idea is that it's 6 to 8, and Wisner's maybe in the 15 range, and Clark's maybe at like a half dozen. I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how you would and Arch is good for a half dozen, and suddenly you're at about 30. Are they going to have more than that? They probably win the game if we start talking about Texas running the ball 40 times in that.
Oh my God, yeah.
But that sounds like how in my mind you'd probably think about the carries, and it seems like goal line and short yardage where there's been a lot of buzz coming out of Saturday about. I was a little disappointed though in the reverse engineering. I don't think anybody mentioned Christian Clark's name from Saturday. I'm thinking back to all of our reports. I've gone to other websites to see what everybody else reported. Just kind of curious what it looked like. I don't remember anybody really mentioning Christian Clark. Baxter got some love. Nothing really on Wisner. It is a position and a part of this offense that I think will be a little bit of an unknown going into Columbus. Part of the problem with having a badass run defense is, and just a badass defense in general, is they don't typically have bad days. So this could be a good rush offense, and it might be that throughout this camp, they will never have a day where they'll walk away going, we ran shit today. And I don't know that that's going to happen. People can't panic because of that. Like this is part of best on best. This is a part. And look, if in a year from now, when Arch Manning's been a starter and comes back for another year, and all of these receivers come back, presumably, right? We may be looking at this and going, man, we know these DBs are good. We can't really go on tilt when we hear that Arch threw 5 touchdown passes in a scrimmage, right? There will be, when one side is full of experienced, game-changing type players, and they are the better unit when these things can go that way. I can remember covering the 2005 Texas offense. They were unstoppable. And so even though on the defensive side of the ball for the Longhorns, the defense that end up being good enough that they could win games in Columbus, beat USC in the national championship game with a big defensive stop, like that was a defense that people will tell you that was one of the best 10 defenses in the history of the school. But when they practiced against each other, vets in that group got in their ass, man. And that was the best secondary in the history of the school. 2 Thorpe Award winners, 3 first-round draft picks. But, like, when they would practice, the offense would get the better of the two. And so you'd go into the season and you'd go, well, we know what they did last year, and they were good. And we know they're really talented. A bunch of guys are going to play in the NFL. But what it all means is something that's hard to define this early on. I think the 2 things that are definable in this 1 versus 2 matchup are the 2 defenses. And I think there's nothing definable at all about the 2 offenses other than they both have gone through a bunch of change. They're both starting quarterbacks making their first truly big game starts. I mean, Arch's level of experience is just a smidge higher than Sands at this point, but it counts. Like that's it. These 2 teams bring badass defenses to the puzzle, and what these offenses are going to be, I really don't know. And I don't think we're going to know until we get on the field the Saturday of the game. And then we'll either go, yep, we saw this coming, and it's a slow paced kind of premium for points kind of game. Or we'll go, oh, what both of these offenses needed was to not practice against the other's defense. And now look what it looks like. And I don't know. I tend to think the defenses will rule the day, but I can't say with certainty that I have a great feel for how this is going to look. We've never been asked in the history of college football, certainly in the history of the Texas program, on game 1, minute 1, play 1 of the season, that the magnitude of what it means would ever be so high.
Yeah, because it's, typically, Catch, there's always been that softer team in week 1, tougher team in week 2 kind of thing for Texas. So you kind of get that little bit of a runway. And like, this is one of those, they're just being thrown into the fire. So there's no UTSA in week 1, or there's none of these other, if they get San Jose State in week 1, all right, cool. Then you go into week 2, but this is one of those, they're like, hey, we need some ratings. We're trying to start this thing out. Like, networks are like, we need money. Sorry, y'all. We got, and so they hit that ground running, and so then there's that. Week 1 is always that fluky week catch where everyone's just trying to get their bearings. There's live bullets that are flying. By the way, we're only probably a couple of weeks away from cliche season. We're just getting so tired of hitting each other. Those cliches that start coming in. Like, and some reporter in another week or two is like, hey, man, are you guys just ready to hit somebody else? They're like, yup. I'm like, so anyway, we're getting close to like cliche season, right? So that's how close it is. But it is going to be one of those things that I do believe it's going to be defense. I'm with you. I'll probably take the under at this moment, because you hear good things. And look, Ohio State's got good defensive guys, right? I mean, we talk about Smith, but I mean, they do have Caleb Downs on that side as well, right? So, I mean, they do have some dudes who are ballers on that side as well. So, it'll be good. Now, because we're talking about defense, Sark will have a press conference today, and then he'll probably just talk up the offense. And we're like, what are you guys talking about? My offense is badass. But this is the same Sark who last week said, hey, every team I've been on that's been a good / championship team, the defense has been ahead at this point. And so he's said that. And so I take it as, no matter what you're hearing, it's kind of part of the plan, kind of falling in line as to like what they want to see and what they want to do and what they want to accomplish.
Let's go by position, kind of rapid fire.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'll just throw them at you and you hit the pitches. The player at quarterback who this is the biggest week for whom?
Trey Owens.
What does he have to do?
I don't know. You know what? I'm going to take it back. It's big for Matthew Caldwell, because I think Matthew Caldwell is the backup. So, you know what? I don't think we're going to
lose the job, right?
Yeah, I would say that. Don't do anything crazy. And then really what you got to do is just solidify yourself and make sure the staff has comfort in you. So I would go call for it's big for Caldwell, I would say.
I'm going to say running back again, and I'm going to just ask you, are you sure Jarrett Gibson is the guy at that position of all the guys at that position? It might be the answer. You may have already answered it, but I'm just going to ask it again. Running back, biggest week is for whom?
I mean, if it's the biggest week, I think CJ Baxter just needs to continue doing what he's doing and continue to build up the faith and confidence that they can throw him in early and get him. Sark talks a lot about catch. He talks a lot about this being a long season. And he didn't want to use the word pitch count as relates to CJ Baxter, but you kind of felt like, okay, is he going to put him on a little bit of a pitch count just to make sure? But I think if CJ can show them like, hey, I'm good to go. Like, don't worry about me. I'm good. Then Sark can say, okay, let's ride. So I think CJ just needs to continue doing what he's been doing and make sure that they continue to have faith in the legs.
Wide receiver.
Yeah, your boy, you mentioned him, Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Mosley. Of course, I'm joking. Emmett Mosley the fifth. That's a big. I think it's a big week for him.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think this is a big week for him. I don't think because look, he might be in too deep. But he transferred here thinking he's going to be a starter. So I think this is big for him. Tight
end. I was thinking about this a lot last night. It's really boring, but this team plays a lot of 12 personnel.
Yeah.
And last year, Juan Davis was the guy, and there was a whole lot of, well, what the hell, Juan Davis? I kind of feel like Spencer Shannon might be this year's Spencer Shannon, Juan Davis. They're going to play a lot of two tight ends. They just do. Most of their tight end position right now is a bunch of like athletes. Jordan Washington, big wide receiver. Nick Townsend, athlete. Injuries is his own kind of thing. Spencer Shannon's like the only well, that dude's big. He's just big and will hit some dudes. And I don't know who the answer is at tight end, like who's this week is the biggest week, but I feel like maybe Spencer Shannon is the Matthew Caldwell of the tight end position, that maybe he's going to play a lot unless he does something to lose the job. And like, it's a good position for him to maybe be in. Like, I don't know who can replicate what he replicates. It's not Townsend. It's not Washington. Those guys are different guys. Tight end position is weird on this team.
It's tough. I mean, it's a tough. That one's a tough one because I mean, you've got injuries, and so okay, that's it, and then really it's just about who's the second guy on the field.
And the injury to Winston this weekend, and we'll wait to see the severity of that, but that dings that position in a way where maybe he would have been the answer to the question if he doesn't get banged up. And if you're the Longhorns, I guess you're thankful that the injuries you've suffered so far in camp keep happening to backups instead of frontline guys. Because as much as we want to be like, oh, Nick Brooks got a little banged up, and obviously, you lose Winston this week.
So about this weekend, I thought I was going to say Kojo.
Kojo add to it, but all of those guys, you'd hate to be sitting here going, oh, well, what's happened on the injury front? It's like, oh, well, they lost Brandon Baker and they lost another offensive line starter, DJ Campbell, and oh, by the way, injuries went down. And then we'd be going, oh, well, maybe I'm not picking Texas to win this game. So knock on wood. But, hopefully all of the guys that are getting banged up remain guys who aren't being counted on to win games. And Ohio State seems like it's been pretty lucky on the injury front, or fortunate, I guess, as well. Neither team has had that huge headline yet in August that always seems to loom at some point. You just pray to get to game day week one and not have had that thing that just seems to happen to everybody once a year at some point.
Right, you want to switch to defense?
Well, offensive line real quick.
Oh. I mean, I don't know, Catch. I mean, I feel like we're all I guess at this point, it's just maybe it's just Jaden Chapman competing for that swing tackle position. I mean, that's because all I'm seeing right now is really a backup battle. I unless you've got something from a starting position, or you're gonna focus
baby one.
Okay, gotcha. Go for it.
I would just like to hear somebody say Neto's name had a good day. Yet Neto Umuzalo has turned it on, and he's had a good week of camp. That's all I want to hear. It alarms me when guys that I have question marks aren't getting praised, and the guys that they're blocking against are. So, this defensive tackle group, all of them look good. Anwar, some of them are starting, and then some of them. I'd like to just hear that the offensive line starters had good days of practice and had good weeks of practice. And I don't know that I like hearing that Ohio State's interior defensive line looks dominant when we know that the biggest question mark on this Texas team in general is probably the unit that will go against what might be Ohio State's greatest strength. If you listen to Ohio State fans, I don't know. Okay, defense. Give me a defensive lineman.
So I was thinking about that. I was trying to think ahead a little bit. The defensive lineman's tough, right, Catch? Because they rotate so much with the interior guys, and they rotate so much on the line. I don't know, because I would love to say defensive line, but those interior guys get used a lot. outside guys. I don't have one. I mean, and Stark already said, Justice Terry, if right now he's a guy that if they had the season started, as we said last week, he probably wouldn't play a lot. So I don't have one for you. But what do you have?
Lance Jackson.
Okay.
Because I think he's close. He's getting a little bit of reps with the ones. He's getting some reps with the twos. He looks like a guy they want to play. He's playing like a guy that can play for the next 5 days, go through Saturday. Can he flip a switch so that they go, that guy's getting 20 snaps in Columbus? Got to play him. Got to play him. It's too good. That guy can win the game if he's on the field. Can he be that guy? Or in a week from now, are they looking at him specifically against Columbus and saying, oh, we really want to get him on the field, and we're going to try to get him on the field, but it will make us a little nervous if we don't pick. You know what I mean? It is a real, we want to get him on the field because he's doing so well, or we're going to get him on the field, but we're not sure how and when. I would like to see him flip it on to an extent where he's viewed as a bona fide weapon game one. And that's a lot to ask, but he's a 5-star. So sorry, Lance, I'm your biggest fan. Flip the switch, because I think you start thinking about that rotation. That's a guy that if he's a part of the rotation, I could see him making a big play, having a coming out party of anybody in the freshman class week one. He's as good a candidate as anybody to be a buzzy name if the moment allows for it. But no pressure, Lance. I'm just picking you out of all of the defensive linemen on campus to have a big week this week, or to need a big week, not necessarily to have one.
Lance is like, I'm still using ways to get around this city of Austin. Hey. Now I gotta have a big week. What? I'm just discovering Austin, man.
Lance is like, bet. Lance Jackson does not strike me as somebody that does not have confidence and that doesn't believe the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. His brother was like that, and I think he's ready for the moment. I think, again, they're giving him chances. It's just a matter of, is he? It's a lot. Week one, the number of freshmen that week one are ready to be starring roles are far and few between. I mean, if it doesn't happen, I'm just saying. To your point, I don't think you can pick a defensive tackle, because it feels like they're going to play all those guys 20 snaps.
Yeah. They're
going to rotate and rotate and rotate and rotate, and they're going to be fresh. And that's going to be the key to their defensive tackle situation this year is fresh, fresh, fresh. I think at defensive end, Colin Simmons. No, Colin Simmons is fine. So, and no one's taking his job. So who are the guys? I don't know. That's why I kind of went Lance Jackson. I don't know that there's an obvious one. I also don't know if there's an obvious one at linebacker.
But they don't have that many, Catch.
Well, and that may be why. They're all these guys have. Don't they all kind of have their roles?
Pretty much.
Look, Trey Moore is like the starting Sam, and when they go 3 linebackers on the field, that's kind of his niche. Anthony Hill and LaFau are your starters and kind of every down players. Ty Anthony Smith comes in when they're in nickel and dime and they need somebody in pass defense. And Bo Barnes is trying to find out, maybe it's Bo Barnes just because everybody else has a defined role. And it just feels like Bo Barnes is the freshman who's behind them all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that Bo Barnes needs to do something. And by the time, you know what I mean? I just feel like that group is the most settled group of all the groups. It's like every single one of them knows their role. They know when they come in. They know who the start. It's all settled. And Bo Barnes could be by the way, shh. You know who's having a badass camp at Ohio State? Shh. Riley Pettyjohn.
Are you serious?
They're like, that dude's gonna play against Texas, and they're talking about him as if maybe he's the best freshman in that entire class. So,
well, I mean,
now you tell us.
You're getting Texas fans flashbacks over here, Catch. But yes, shocker alert.
Well, linebacker is such a big position. So think about what they did to get Tyler Atkinson.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they ever really made that kind of a move after Riley Pettyjohn. They never went to the mattresses for Pettyjohn. And maybe that's because they just felt like Pettyjohn was going to go to Ohio State, and that's just what he wanted to do. But that went last year, that recruitment went from, oh, he's going to be a Longhorn, he's one of the most important guys in this class, to, oh, he went to Ohio State, and like Texas, they're just not going to try real hard. What? Like even in December, it wasn't like Texas came back and offered Riley Pettyjohn $1 million. It never really happened. It was kind of strange. That recruitment did not go like I thought it would. And I'm not shocked, though, to hear that guy's having a really big impact in camp. Okay, secondary. Last one.
I think this for me is just one of keep doing what you're doing. And the more you hear from Warren Roberson and the more times you hear that guy's name, I think that's a good thing for him. Yep. Just being in that rotation, being within that too deep, and Warren Roberson's a guy that, people told me looked really good on Saturday. And so that's one of those things like, okay, all right, Warren, like, you've got some momentum on your side right now. Like, keep it up. Like, there's a lot of these guys we kind of know about. I feel, for the most part, Catch. So I feel pretty good and comfortable with them. And I had maybe a faced, part two of one guy that I would say keep it up the good work. But I would say for me, Roberson would just be like, hey, just keep it up, man, because hearing good things.
He's as good a pick as any. There's a part of me that wants to go Derek Williams. Mm-hmm. Michael Taft is getting reps at star. And Grayson Littleton is there. I kind of feel like week one, they're going to lean on experience if they can. So what is the 5 that gives them the least amount of vulnerability from a experience standpoint? And if you think about the cornerback position, Gilbo and Muhammad on the outside, those two guys they've been through it. So like you're going to have them on the field. The next corner, I don't know that Roberson or Kobe Black, like those guys, it's a big moment in week one. Maybe those guys aren't the one. You start thinking about safety, and it's like, okay, well, Muhammad, look, Jelani McDonald might be the best guy in the secondary. He's having an incredible camp. It feels like, I wonder if you pulled the Texas coaches aside and you said, who's the first guy in the secondary on the team sheet? If you're holding a draft tomorrow, who do you have to have on the field? I think McDonald is the guy. Maybe. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's Taft. Maybe it's Muhammad. They're really good in the secondary. By the way, Muhammad's maybe the MVP of camp so far. I had somebody send me a text message late last night that mentioned I'd made a point in my column, my 10 Thoughts column, to say that Muhammad is making playmaking plays on the ball that he hadn't previously been making in his career. And if they get that playmaking version of Muhammad, that they will finally feel like they're getting the Malik Muhammad that they were getting in the first place. And I had somebody text me last night and say when they paid $1+ million for Manny Muhammad in NIL the last 2 years, that this Manny Muhammad is the guy they thought they were getting. So a lot of excitement there. Can Derek Williams be so good that he's in the first 5? And then you look at that secondary and you go, McDonald, Williams, Taft, Gilbo, Muhammad. That's a lot of proven experience there. If it's any other iteration other than that, whether it's Littleton or Black or anybody else, there's a vulnerability problem there, at least if they also are then making their first start, their first big game appearance in a moment like that. And I have to believe that as this game gets closer, actually, the last thing I'll ask you, and then we'll wrap it up. We're almost at an hour. I'll let you have the final word. As this game gets closer, do you think Steve Sarkisian's sphincter squeezes tight? Or do you think he's loosey-goosey all the way up till game time as a traveling on the road preseason number one with an inexperienced quarterback who's never started a game on the road? Like, I have no idea.
I think he's loose. I think he ends up being loose catch. I think he's, he doesn't have much to quote unquote lose at this point, right? I mean, he's on the road. They're not going to be favored in this game. He can take the underdog role, that he wants to. They're playing the defending national champions in their house. So at that point,
is it found money though? I'm just asking.
I don't know if it's found money, but I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world because with the playoffs expansion, you can rebound even if it doesn't go your way, right? You go from number 1 to number 6, number 7, something like that. You win your next 3 games. You win on the road versus Florida. You're right back in the thick of things. I think Sark can go relax, chill, say the pressure's on them, pressure's not on me. And try to go in and catch. There is a revenge factor. Like Sark's got to be on a revenge tour this year. Catch. There's got to be revenge versus Ohio State. There's got to be revenge versus Georgia, right? So there's a revenge tour that he's got to go on and get some get back. So I think he's loose. I think he goes in and I think he lets it fly. He's got he's got a quarterback that he's got a lot of confidence in. Not to say he didn't have confidence in Quinn, but I think. I think you'll see the best version of Sark in the season opener.
Fingers crossed. I think that's the way Texas wins this game. If you're a reflection of your coach, I think going into Columbus, you probably need to let it all hang out and not be tense and stressed and worried. Anyway, lots of conversation about this game, this team, the dynamics involved all day long, all week long, all month long, right here on Orange Bloods Live. For rogueshop.com. Use that promo code OrangeBloods and go get you some CBD, THC, or whatever it is your little heart desires. Let Shar and Richard take care of you today with the best product and the best presentation and the best everything I've ever had.
Hold on, Catch. Someone says a super chat.
Oh, there's a super chat? Did we miss one?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Pay attention.
What
did we miss?
There we go.
You got it?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
First team to score, buy. Tucker, buy. Yes. I'm not sure either team gets to 20, if I'm being completely honest. Could be a 17-13 kind of a game.
Yeah, it definitely will be low scoring. So I'm glad we got the super chat in there. And like everybody who's asking about Mello guy, yeah, look, man, like it's cool to come in here. I like people to participate in the chat. But if you're just gonna come in here and just talk shit and be insulted, like you can. There's plenty of channels. If you feel like we don't know what the hell we're talking about, find a channel that you like, but you don't go into a restaurant and go and sit down and go, you know what? There's other restaurants that are better than this one. And continue to act like you're going to get good service. Like, no. If you don't like it, cool. Go somewhere else. There's other people that do. Go find your happiness. It's just not going to be here.
Oh, man. It sounds like we got trolls in their feelings today. It's okay. I'll give you a hug. Bring it in. For myself and Anwar Richardson, who are not suffering fools today of any nature, you guys have a fantastic Monday. We'll be back for a little Orange Bloods Live at the top of the hour.
Oh, yeah, by the way, shout out to Mike Torres, who hooked it up. He's the guy that hooked it up for me and my son to get on the field at the Austin FC game. So shout out to Mike Torres for seeing me and my son, having somebody come on. Max was thrilled. So thank you, Mike.
That looked like fun. Those pictures were phenomenal. Yeah. And it sounds like that was the best part of the Austin FC game when it was all said and done at the end. 2 points dropped instead of 1 point earned. Sorry. It's what happens when you go up 2-0 and drop a result. All right, guys. Have a great rest of the day. Little weird soccer talk there at the end. Y'all have a good one. Later.